Good morning, Alan. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Jeff. You look good today. I should have my glasses. I don't have my glasses.
Now,
I do have to wear glasses now. This is not a dad joke. This is serious. I failed my vision test at the DMV when I went to renew my license.
oh,
I've had glasses for years, never wear them. I
welcome.
can't see nothing at nighttime, but I figure that's fine.
How do you know? How do you know he looks good without his without your glasses on? Then that is the real question.
Is that a point?
Well,
That was the first joke.
Yeah,
this is what happens in your 40s, Alan. Your eyesight starts to go.
I wish I was in my 40s, but thank you. I appreciate that.
That was the second joke.
Yeah.
I had an uncle that decided to make his own glasses.
Wow.
He was a bit cheap. He cut the bottom off of glass ketchup bottles. He couldn't see crap, but his hindsight was perfect.
Oh, that's so good.
Thank you.
That's so good. Hey, how do you say constipation in German? Far from pooping.
Gosh, that's terrible. All right. As we're letting everybody join, we'd like to spend the first couple minutes. If this is your first time joining us for an Integrate Live, I promise you are on the right webinar. We love to tell jokes as we're building out projects, and we usually eat up the first couple minutes, letting everybody join. We probably shouldn't accommodate for late people quite the way that we do, but hey, we're nice guys. All right. Hey, today is episode 14. I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Remember, at integratelive.com, you can see all of our previous episodes. I was just telling the guys that I think we're averaging something around 350, maybe 400 views across those episodes. And it's incredible to see the viewership, how long they stay on those videos on the statistics. So appreciate everybody's continued commitment and support. Alan, we've got some great guests with us today. I'd like to start off, introduce Peter to the audience. Peter Mannon is with Phoenix Contact. Peter, you're out of, I think you told me, Arizona, just south of Phoenix? Is that right?
I'm out of Phoenix area. Sweating.
Okay. Yeah, so Phoenix-based for Phoenix Contact. I like that.
Yes.
And
that's the only way I got hired. They said if you didn't live in Phoenix, they wouldn't hire me. So I did.
They wouldn't do it. And how long have you been with the company?
Almost 9 years, 8.5 years. So
awesome. And
so yeah, I been around a few different companies, and so I've been blessed to work with the PLCnext system here, which was Phoenix's really first dive into PLCs in a serious way. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, well, no, thanks for joining us. And if you were watching our rundown last week, you've already met Jay from Influx. Hey, Jay, good to have you here again today.
Thank you for having me back. I mean, it would have been pretty tragic if I'd only made the first one and you said don't come back for the actual integration. So,
well, now the seeker is just making around for the second one, right? You've been invited for the second integration. You know you did something right on the first one.
That's it. It's like what's it on the glass interview panel? Like, it's like, this is your second round, you know, you've made it. So
that's right. That's right. Well, we're looking forward to seeing what you have for us today. And anybody that's familiar with the community already knows Kyle and already knows Dawood. Hey, Dawood. Hey, Kyle. How are you?
Hey, good. Glad to be here. We're glad to be back.
We're glad to have you. And I think between the two of you, you're like got every type of connectivity to any type of manufacturing industrial database or machine or connector covered, right? Kyle, you're with Kepware. David, you're with Toolbox.
So bring it on. We'll connect to it, except your microwave at home, I would assume.
I think Kyle's got a G. Kyle, if you've got a GE microwave, Kyle can connect to it.
Probably, yeah. We can build something. We'll figure it out.
Oh, all right. Are we ready to get started? Let's get started. So, David, I'm going to do a quick screen share, and let's cover the architecture and walk us through the architecture, if you would, as well as the use case that we're finding ourselves with today.
With the greatest of pleasure. So If we kind of recap from the rundown episode of last week, so let's talk about the use case or the business case first. So the kind of discussion we had was around, look, we know we know the standard kind of lay of the land when it comes to the operational technology or the OT environment. So there's PLCs in your facilities and plants, there's SCADA systems, there's HMI systems, and all the historical data typically is stored in some sort of a known process historian for that matter. And on top of that historian, obviously, is a lot of extraction tools for process people, for engineers, for plant people to extract data and understand what's happening with the process data. The challenge which I've experienced, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person that experienced that over the last short while, was that the process historian is there to do what it's supposed to do, to take high-speed data from PLCs through Kepware as an IO server, for example, and pump that into some sort of a database technology in order for quick analysis, quick trending, quick queries, etc., to these specific people on the plant floor. But now, fast forward a couple of requirements down the line, the concept of data analytics is becoming a daily occurrence. So there's teams that's being established in your more mature and even less mature facilities from a manufacturing perspective that's after the concept of, well, I want to understand what patterns, what recognition, what machine learning can I apply from my data. And the OT people, of which I am one, says, well, look, it's all good and well. I'll give you the data for you to do some analysis and do some pattern recognition, etc. But please don't come to me and ask for 100,000 tags of data at 1 second intervals for 5 or 6 months, because potentially you're going to break my historian or slow it down, etc. So what we're talking about here, and this is where Influx comes to the rescue as a nice open and understandable database, is to say, how do you satisfy that analytics requirement without having any impact on the existing infrastructure and protecting that holy land as created at the moment? So what we're really trying to show is how easy it is to take a next-gen type PLC with a built-in OPC server, take Kepware and the IIoT Gateway that has the ability to publish directly or write data directly to the InfluxDb. Influx then consumes this data and makes it available for the world, for those data analytic teams and all kinds of other funny people that's above my pay grade, to analyze data, to play with it, to send it to other systems, etc., and ultimately find those recognitions and patterns and machine learning algorithms and all these kind of things. And then where Software Toolbox comes into the picture is to say, well, in the utopian environment, obviously one day when machines tells us how to run them, we will take set points or analytics, etc., and push that down via some middleware through Kepware down to a PLC again in order to manipulate a set point of a line to reduce wastage or whatever the case might be. So that's the business case and the highlighting of the scenarios in terms of how we will showcase that to the audience today is to, like I say, we've got an XTM PLC from PLC or Phoenix Contact at the bottom. It's one of the few PLCs out there with a built-in OPC UA server. So that's the layer 1 infrastructure. Kepware, which Kyle represents from a IIoT Gateway perspective, will link to that OPC UA server, extract the tags and push the tags to the InfluxDb. Jay will show us a little bit about Influx. He'll show us also how easy it is to quickly build a little Grafana dashboard and do some basic analytics. And what I'll show from the Software Toolbox side is to say, well, how do we take the raw data, the 1 second data, which the analytics people are after, but potentially create a little bit of basic analysis with that data. So let's work out a moving 5-minute average of a tag or two. Write that number one back into the database. So we have that stored, that average or mean stored, but also bring that back down to Kepware. So Kepware can push that and bridge that tags back down to the PLC for the machine to act on new data or whatever the case might be. So Jeff,
Perfect.
I hope that puts it in context, and I'm really looking forward to this practical session.
Yeah, it does. And just before we kick it off with Peter, and Peter, there's your 30-second warning to be ready to go. There's 2 things I just want to add on, David. First is that there's historians that you don't need to do this for, okay? And I think it's important we mention that. Canary is a perfect example. Canary is going to handle brute force reads coming off of that historian. So this isn't this isn't us saying, hey, this is the way that you should do it for every environment. This is us saying when you have a brittle environment with a historian that's not performing and isn't going to handle the performance, this is something to consider. Other potential kind of hole in the plot here, right, is someone might be saying, well, I need a lot of historical data in order to do this, and we're just showing how to get real-time data. Okay, fair enough. There may be a one-time batch of historical data that you need to extract and bring into Influx. We're assuming that's been done, or that you're only going after right now real-time data. So you could go and do a one-time 12-month or 2-year archive pull, convert it and load it up into Influx, and then move forward with this architecture.
Correct. So move that out of the Holy Land for that matter. Maybe just to add to that, so the reason why some historians are, can handle it and some historians can't is all about how you extract the data from the historian. So some tools use very efficient SDKs, for example, which has got no impact on historian performance, and other tools just do stock standard SQL extraction queries, which is not that great because now it chows up available resources in order to run the query. So it all depends on what the setup is.
Perfect. Okay. So Peter, ready for you. Audience, if you have questions as we're going through this, please use the Q&A. Don't use the chat. We're going to monitor the Q&A, and we will either answer the questions as we're going, or we'll batch the questions for some of them and answer them at the end. All right, Peter, kick us off.
All right. Thank you. I just want to tell you, with the weather changing, my knee's been bothering me, and we went to the doctor the other day, and I learned something I didn't know, is that I didn't know. Did you guys know that dogs can't operate MRI scanners, but CAT scans? Sorry. Okay, that was my foray into a bad joke. So thank you very much.
That's a good joke.
Yeah, good. There's not many more of those, so we'll go with that. So thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity. Jeff said I only had 45 minutes to go through 300 PowerPoint slides, so I was like, wow, I better hustle.
That was funny.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, what I want to do is I appreciate the time to talk to everybody today. And what I'm going to do is go through just a kind of a high level of what the PLCnext is. Some of you may have heard of it. Again, appreciate being here, but people sometimes ask why has Phoenix gotten into the PLC market? Maybe you've heard about it. What makes it different? Is it just another PLC? Well, it's actually not. Basically, we took a PLC and we added a Linux computer together. We smashed them into one box, and that's why we call it PLCnext. And what it basically is, we took our standard hardware, like our I/O structure, and we stuck Linux on it. One of the reasons why we did that is now we can take access to open systems, open sources. We do have built-in firewalls. It is cloud ready. And we use the Linux real-time kernel in that controller. So this was the secret sauce, the Linux operating system. One thing about Linux on our controller, it is fully open. So you do have full access to Linux, to the root system and everything. So if you'd like to play with that sort of thing, our controller definitely allows you full access. And what we did is we took our PLC and we made a real runtime application and put it on Linux. That allowed us to do standard IEC 611 PLCs, but also it also allows you to add C# and C++ code right in the control. So you can run C++ and C# code right beside the PLC and synchronize those logics. And then we added HTML5. So HTML5 allows you to host, and we're going to be showing these screens in a little bit, that you can host screens, you can bring in images. It is HTML5, so you can do high definition, and it doesn't lock you down to any specific HMI. You can use a web browser off a phone or any type of device. So it really opens up the architecture a lot, and so you're not really locked in. And the whole concept of the PLCnext has always been being open. So that's what we tried to do in all things, and you'll notice that. And then, of course, if you want to write your own applications in parallel with the PLCnext, you can, and you can just use the REST interface to pull data and send data to the PLC. So that's it. This is some of the communication options we have. I know it's kind of an eye chart, but it's being recorded. So if you want to go back and view it and stop, you can look at it. But we have a lot of communications in there, including we're going to be talking about the OPC UA. We did just add an OPC UA client to the software. We do charge for that feature, but you can actually be the master of the OPC UA in your PLC, which is pretty cool. And also, I didn't get into it, but MQTT and MQTT Sparkplug B are also available to our system. We are going to be releasing additional protocols coming up soon, but I just wanted to show you the list was there just for a flexibility. As far as hardware goes, we have a pretty broad range of hardware. What's unique about our hardware is we use the same Linux background on all of them. So if you write code, you know, the same basic code, whether it's a 32 or 64-bit, the Linux is the same across the board, which means you have the same features and functions, and you can take the same PLC software or code you've written and upgrade it, downgrade it to each controller. So I kind of broke them out by performance levels. We go all the way from a dual core PLC all the way up to an 8-core PLC, sorry, an i7. So also, this is what a thin client would be. They look like an HMI, but these are just HMIs that have basically Google Chromium running on them. And we're going to show screens that were generated, some very basic plain screens. But basically what this shows is we have products that act like it, look like an HMI and are treated like an HMI, but yet they're just really thin clients because you still need to have access to the machine. So that's really all I had for an overview. I just kind of wanted to show you the basics of the PLC and the hardware. And I'll touch a little bit more about a little bit of the software stuff very quickly at a later time.
So one of the cool things about this next generation of PLC, as you're getting ready to start building your project, so from the Flow software side, I'm going to be at a show in October. I was just looking at the show at the 3-day conference floor diagram and noticed that Flow is right beside Phoenix Contact, booth side by side. And so I reached out to Dave Eifert and like, hey, Dave, I've got an idea. Let's talk. You know, I haven't firmed this up yet, but in my mind, like, cool, I'm going to figure out how to run Flow.NET 6 on the PLCnext device sitting beside me, and we're going to do a cool interactive demo. It's just that flexibility by being able to do that is incredible.
You should then break the wall down between the two.
Metaphorically?
Right? No, physically. Just break it down. Break down the entire wall between Phoenix and Flow at the conference.
Playing Pink Floyd the whole way. I like it. All right, Peter. Show us the project, sir.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to show you real quick into that comment you just made. We do have a store that's out there that exists. It's kind of like the Apple Store, but it's for geeks and guys that like to add stuff to their PLC. And you know what you can do is just like you had mentioned, Jay. You can it wants me to log in, but you can download things. Like for example, I can type in Influx, and you'll see that I can actually load Influx right on my controller, right? Also, I have Grafana, which we are going to be showing later. You can load Grafana right on your PLC. So these are applications. Since we open up the Linux side, this allows you to add things to the controller to be a little bit more, more specific as to what you need. So you can also add memory to the controller, which will make it much more significant. So anyway, with no further ado to that, let me go into the application that we did. This is our UI right now for the PLCnext. And you can look at the tree and see the hardware, what's installed in the controller. This is basically the task manager and how you run the control and how fast the program's going to execute. You have your global variables over here. And one thing you'll note about the global variables is I have a tab called OPC variables. And they had mentioned earlier, I think David did, that the OPC UA server is installed in the PLCnext. So all I have to do, if I have a variable, if I check the box for OPC, that variable becomes viewable on the OPC UA network, and I have to do nothing else. I literally, of course, I have security settings that I can change for the OPC UA and import certificates, but the ease of adding a variable to be discovered or imported into the OPC UA is that simple, literally. So as you write your program, this is what I wrote a little demo program that basically just has some timers and counters and just created some variables that were being able to be displayed. And so I wrote this little simple program based on some timers. And then I came over to the web server and I designed this little simple dashboard. I didn't put a lot of stuff on it because I didn't want to be too busy. But for example, this button is attached to a variable in the PLC. So this one starts, and if you go to the PLC program, you'll see there's the tag name, which is the same as on the HMI. And then you also can pull or display data. And again, since all the PLC variables are there, creating these screens, these HMI screens, is very simple because I already created my program. All I do is tell the variable that it's going to be an HMI variable, and then I can use it as an input, an output, a display, a variable. I can actually go in and choose how many decimals I want to show. So it's a pretty full database. And so what's happening here is that when you push the start, the timers start and these values start filling, and then you can reset any of these timers or counters anytime you want. And there's just some basic calculations that happen. And I allow you to turn an anomaly every 5 to 30 seconds. An anomaly can occur that will cause some disturbance in the database to show things. But that's the basics of how simple it is to take a variable, add it to an OPC UA tag to create an OPC UA tag, and then also to take that same tag or any tag in the controller and display it on a screen. And then all you do is download this single file, and the PLC actually generates these screens and will execute them. So there you go, Jeff. Back
Awesome.
to you.
Hey, a question came in for you around Sparkplug B. So capabilities to both publish and subscribe to a broker, or are you just publishing?
Yes, you can publish and subscribe.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
sir.
I have a question. If I'm gonna publish tags, I get that. I can go in configuration, I pick my tags, I publish. When you're subscribing, what is the landing of those tags that you're subscribing to? Are you creating tags in the PLC? Or are they landing in someplace else? So so I can publish to a broker and I can read from that. If those tags change that I'm publishing, I get those change updates if I enable write. But the reality is, if I'm going to say I want to subscribe to a broker and I've got X amount of tags in the broker, when I subscribe to that broker, where do all those tags land in the PLCnext?
As you were asking that question,
that's a great question. I wasn't prepared for. I do believe most of the stuff we do on our site is we're publishing mostly, right? Because we're the control master. But when you read it, I believe it comes in just as a straight topic name. Whatever the topic name is, it will create that space for that device.
Let's come back. Let's come back with an answer. I'll do a follow-up.
Yeah.
Answer, and I'll include it. I'll include the answer on the episode when I post it on integratelive.com. Thank you, Peter. And
thank you.
You can't take the Oilman IO simplicity out of your background, can you, Alan? Alan says, "I know it's scale. I need this to go this way for me to be able to use it." And
well, it's the details, right? Look. We all know that, and to be fair, let me just clarify. I know that in PLCnext, I can go into Node-RED. I can stand up an MQTT node. I can subscribe to my broker and bring the tags in and then parse through them and do all kinds of stuff with them. We can do that. We know that. I also know the complexity within the PLC of if I'm going to subscribe to a broker and pull tags in, I have to be very careful now, because if I say, oh, just go give me this topic, and I've got 100,000 tags there, where are those tags going to land in that PLC? And so there's some complexity there that I want to make sure that that our audience doesn't just go, oh, it can do it. Okay,
Yep.
well, it probably can, but you could also do some damage if it can. And what's the guardrails you put in place to make sure the PLC is protected?
The way actually I can answer that very basically right now is that the application that pulls in the database is not necessarily directly tied to your PLC, right?
Okay.
So you'd actually have
That
to
was my
join them
question. Where
separately.
do the tags land? Do they land in a separate memory
It
space?
will.
Or create a
It
tag?
will.
If they land in a separate memory space, and then you have all those tags there, and then I can, then Phoenix Contact can go grab certain tags and bring them into the control scheme. That's great. Awesome. Love it. Would love to see it.
Yeah, the MQTT Sparkplug B is actually an application that's running and pulling in parallel to the
Okay.
PLC. So that one is a parallel access. So it would be separate.
I like it.
All right. We'll come back with any other specifics in the community. Hey, Peter, thank you. And we'll look
Peter
forward
has
to
another question, Jeff. Do you want to cover it now or later?
hit it later on.
Okay.
Just trying to maintain the clock. All
Hey,
right.
good job.
Thanks.
Good to be on top.
All right, Kyle, show us how Peter has got his simulator on. Now you're looking for some data, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So just for the audience, so through the power of the internet and the U.S. Postal Service, I have the actual physical Phoenix Contact PLCnext sitting in my home office with the demo, or excuse me, the project that Peter just showed downloaded, all ready to go. So what I'll actually do right now is I will show you that HMI screen that he created. Just getting confirmation. We can see the HMI screen.
Yep.
Getting slight head nods and a yes. Great. So we're seeing this now with the live data coming through. We'll pretend this says 0, but surprise to everybody here, we have to test the demo. But we'll see this in a little bit here. So we're seeing live data coming in through now. No Kepware involved. This is just straight up the HMI. But now, again, since the whole point of this is, hey, we're trying to send this out to other pieces of software, in this case, InfluxDB, why don't we actually pull up Kepware and we'll get this going. So by now, what we're looking at, just the configuration GUI of Kepware. It's been around forever. Comments aside, someone once said this looks like Windows 95. Not disagreeing with you, but I have to represent them somehow. Anyways, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a connection, an OPC UA connection down to the PLCnext. So what we'll do, just like any other Kepware project, we will go in, we will create a channel, which is really just Kepware's way of saying, well, how are we getting down, and by what measure are we connecting down to the PLC? So what I'll do here, I'll insert the URL to the security policies, just like a regular UA connection. We'll click through next. We will do the username and password here. 870F. We'll click next, and then finally finish. And because it's a live demo, I went through and forgot to name it correctly, but that's fine. And again, we can name this whatever we want, but just for purposes, we'll this here. Oops. There we go. Okay. So now we've told Kepware how we're getting down to the device. Now we're saying, well, where and what. So we'll go through and we'll actually go and connect down to that server and start pulling out tags here. So we can do, here we go, made that connection, and boom, we can see the tags that are inside of that PLC, but exposed to the UA server. So actually, I'll go in here and just grab all these tags. We'll click OK, we'll click next, we'll click finish. And then we will see in just a second here, hey, look at that, we've got 21 tags created. But again, if you're new to Kepware, what we're seeing here isn't necessarily the live data coming through. We're just seeing some information about the tag. So what we actually have to do in order to see the live data coming through is create some sort of client connection to Kepware, which will initiate the driver. So for us, we have a tool, an internal tool called Quick Client, which actually creates an OPC DA connection to Kepware, really just used for troubleshooting purposes. And I now get to demonstrate the newest feature that I love in Kepware, where we can actually right-click on this and then launch the Quick Client from that particular device, as opposed to doing it the old way, which would open up all of the devices, which can be potentially harmful. So now we're seeing the live values in the PLC there. Good to go. So great. So now we've confirmed we have a connection down to the PLC. So the next part is, well, now we need to get into InfluxDB somehow, and how are we going to do that? And we're going to do that by leveraging a plugin that Kepware has called the IoT Gateway. And the IoT Gateway allows us, being Kepware, to go in, take that industrial data that we've been collecting and actually transform it to protocols like MQTT or some of the REST-based protocols. And in this case, and Jay, keep me honest, I believe it's called the line protocol, but it's something specific to Influx. We can actually go in, create a REST connection, and then actually change that payload around to match the payload that InfluxDB actually requires. And we'll show how to do that in a second. So we'll go through, we'll add an agent. This will be a REST client. We'll just call it InfluxDB. We'll click next. We will give the URL, and this URL came directly from InfluxDB, and Jay will probably show you how to do that in a little bit here. So we've got the URL, and now we've got to add this header here. And in this case, we actually, for the authorization, we'll be using a pre-made token. So we'll just add that right to the header here. Again, we got this from the InfluxDB site. Then we will click finish. Now, the next part, we're going to open up that agent. We're actually going to change around what the message template looks like. And this is where that advanced template comes in. So we'll go through, we'll collect advanced template, and then we can actually, once we open this up, go and change what that payload looks like. So I think I want to say maybe a year and a half ago, Jay and I did a webinar. And part of that webinar was exploring how to create this line protocol. You can actually get that exact format off of the InfluxDB GitHub site, which has all this information, including the original webinar. So if you wanted to recreate this and not, go back and try to figure it out yourself, you can just copy and paste this format into the template here. So we will click OK, and then we will click apply. So now the last thing we need to do is actually just add items for the IoT Gateway to publish. So in order to do that, we'll just click on Add IoT Items. We open up a tag browser. We can go right to our PLC. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll just throw all of them in there. Click OK. And then in a second, what we'll see down here is we'll see, hopefully if all goes well, knock on wood, we will see Kepware successfully publishing data over to InfluxDB. And then once that happens, boom, there we go, successful connection. And then we will be back to Kepware in a second. But for now, we'll turn it over to Jay.
Cool. Hey, Kyle, see if you can find on Influx's GitHub the link for that and drop it into the chat if you find it.
Sure, absolutely.
Can I just say the biggest revelation I'm going to have from this webinar is that OPC client feature Kepware just added. See, when I was running like Kepware on like 2 gigs of RAM on a crappy VM on Mac OS, the moment I just clicked OPC client and it brung up all my tags, I just watched my computer commit suicide. So this is a fantastic feature request.
Not even joking when the engineer, I figured out who the engineer was that created that. I bought that guy a 6-pack. Like it is such a great feature.
You'd be expecting shares, like give me Kepware shares, please. Like, thanks very much.
One of those things that you always wanted and just didn't know how to get it, but once you have it, it's like magic.
Yeah, you don't know if you've ever missed it. So I'll rock and roll with my section. So Kyle kind of sort of elaborated on that we've devised this connection directly to InfluxDB, and since we're kind of new to the show, and you might not know what InfluxDB is, I thought we'd just quickly have a stopgap check and say this is exactly what we are. So we're a purpose-built open source time series database. It was originally created around about 2013, and what we wanted to do was build a time series database that was purely dedicated to ingesting time series data in a highly efficient way. So that's lots of data on ingest, being able to query lots of points in near real time. Now, what we found out when creating this, we expected it to be used as a monitoring tool. A lot of people would just monitor, their Linux servers. They would look at the CPU usage and look at RAM, etc. But we quickly found out that we had a place within IIoT as well. And people started using it to monitor their sensors on the shop floor, because this is all based on time series data. One of the main reasons why InfluxDB is used in that way is just because of how easy it is to get up and going. We're schema on write. So what you would have seen from Kyle there is he simply created a template and started pushing data to InfluxDB and got a big fat OK. And that's because we generate the schema on the fly the moment that's written to InfluxDB. And I'll dig into that and show you a little bit of that when we get to that portion of the InfluxDB demo. What you're seeing right now is InfluxDB serverless, hopefully on my screen. So this is our SaaS-based cloud offering. So we have 3 different versions, just to let you know. We have InfluxDB OSS, which you can install and run yourself, something that can be installed on PLCnext, which was what you saw in their marketplace. We have our serverless option, which is our cloud-based offering, which is a SaaS solution that we're using today. This is all based on our new storage engine, which is a bit more efficient for lots and lots of independent series. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then we have a dedicated offering. So if you don't want to be on a cluster with everyone else and you want your own tenancy, essentially, then we have that offering available as well. So here is our main panel. It's pretty simple. Really, you're here to query, add data, and manage your overall administration within InfluxDB. So just to break down some of what Kyle took from me in order to be able to write data, what he needed was the following credentials. So if I jump into settings, and then he needed our URL to know where to write the data to. So he got that from our cluster URL. He needed to know the organization ID, because since we have many organizations within the cluster, he needs to be able to direct that data to the correct location. And he also needed to know the API token, or he needed an authorization from me to be able to write to InfluxDB. And to do that, I simply created a new API token. You can have an all access token, which is basically an administration token. This is a God mode. I don't really advise handing these out, hey, willy-nilly. It's purely for your administrators. What really we should be doing is creating a custom generated token. Our buckets are our databases, just for context speak. And essentially what I created for him was a write-only token for PLCnext, which I generated. And this was the token that you saw, or a token like it, that Kyle could use to write directly from Kepware to InfluxDB. So the last thing that he had was where we actually store the data, and that's within what we call a bucket. We are renaming it, just for full disclosure, where we realized bucket didn't resonate with anyone, so we are bringing bucket back to database. So I'm going to refer to it as a database, just our UI team hasn't got around to changing it from bucket to database. So
did market have something to do with the naming?
Yeah. So I feel like we went along with like the AWS world of going, oh, everything can be in a bucket now. It's a bucket for a data store. And I think we were like, yeah, that sounds great. And then when everyone goes, but you're a database, right? And we're like, yeah, not a bucket. So we decided to see the light and come back to the old naming conventions. So we have a database called PLCnext, and this is where Kyle is writing our Kepware data to. So let's jump into our data explorer and take a look at the data that's being written. So here is our PLCnext bucket. And what we have is what we call a measurement. So if you're familiar with SQL, measurement is basically a closely equivalent to a table. This is auto-created when we write that line protocol. In this case, we've named it the measurement Kepware. And then we have a series of fields and tags. So fields in our case are values that constantly update. So think about all of those PLC tags, which are constantly updating with either floats or sensor-based data. That's how we consider tags related. So we use the terminology of fields. Our primary key, since we're a time series database, is a timestamp. So that's the main primary way we basically index your data. There is a secondary way we index your data to be able to filter on multiple active series at the same time. And what I mean by multiple active series, think about it like with PLCnext. You might have 500 PLCnexts all on your floor. You want to be able to monitor all of those PLCnexts. How do I distinguish between one series from another if they're all giving me the same timestamp? And that's where tags come in. Tags are that secondary way of filtering upon your data. So if I have a look at our tags here, you can see that we've got our channel and our device. So we have device 1 and PLCnext. Now, Kyle, we're going to find this out the hard way, I think, but do you remember if you did device 1 or PLCnext is in your Kepware?
PLCnext.
PLCnext, nice. Cool.
Oh, nope, I take it back. I'm sorry. Demo device 1. I can change it.
Here we go. No, you're good. You're good. So what we can do is once we run, you can see that we have our table that comes up. We have our values from Kepware, which is our accelerator 1, 2, 3, 4, whether there's an anomaly detection, which is a Boolean based value. And then we have our tags. And as you can see, confirmed by Carl, it is device 1 that we are currently writing from. So if I just bring that down, and then if we look, and we can go back a little bit because we've been writing for a couple of days, and you can see we brought back 5,000 rows in about 200 milliseconds, just to show you the performance of bringing back basically points that we've iterated on over, two days. Currently, this is all SQL-based querying. What I wanted to show you was going from a very raw SQL query here. So this is just like select star from the table Kepware, give me the data from now, which is now minus the last 2 days. What about if we wanted to perform some form of aggregation on that data? So what about if we wanted to basically put it into a bin, as we call it, and then provide an average, like a time-based rolling average as we go. So I'm just going to copy this query here. I'm going to chuck this in here just so you can see. You can see what I'm doing in this query. This is a SQL-based one that I'm basically binning my data by 1 minute intervals. And then taking an average of accelerator 1, accelerator 2, accelerator 3, and accelerator 4. So give me the average for each 1 minute bin interval for the last 15 minutes. And then group by 1 just simply means group by the first set. So I want to group by basically my bin times. If I run, you can see here, these are my averages for that data on the timestamp, and you can see it's within 1 minute intervals across the board. So that's kind of gives you an overview of how to use the InfluxDB UI and the data that we have there, which is great, but it doesn't, as using it on the shop floor, it's not very practical. You're not going to go back to the data explorer and utilize this every time that you want to see what's happening with your data. You want to be able to see a dashboard of some kind that basically visualizes this data. And that's kind of where I roll into Grafana and show you our integrations to Grafana there. So I think if everyone's happy, I'll roll into a bit of Grafana unless anyone has any questions on the Influx stuff.
Yeah, we did have a question come in from the audience, and I have a question as well.
Yeah, go for it.
Christian's asking, out of Flux, InfluxQL and SQL, which query language do you feel that Influx development is really focusing on?
So that's a really interesting question. So Basically, on the way the new 3.0 has been done, SQL is the native language that the query scheduler understands. What we've done is we've added a native InfluxQL schedule to that too. We plan on developing both of them equally in parallel, just so it's basically down to where you feel more comfortable. There is certain features that SQL has over InfluxQL currently in the broader scheme of things, just because SQL is a more generalized language. Like currently SQL supports conditional and ors and ifs, whereas InfluxQL doesn't right now. We plan to add that to InfluxQL in the future, but there is a lot more breadth to SQL than there is to InfluxQL. I personally find InfluxQL a lot easier to work with when it comes to certain functions in time series, like in analysis. Like you'll see, I'll show you an InfluxQL query later where I do this query here in about one line, and it looks so much nicer. And so it just really depends on your preference. But we are equally developing both of those at the same time. So you just need to try out both and see which one fits you better.
Makes sense. And then question for you, when we're looking at average, is this a time-weighted average? Is it a mean?
So this one is just a bog standard average on those bins. So basically a SQL-based average on the on accelerator data in those minute intervals. So it's like just a standard mean average, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Is time weighted currently supported, or do you have to do handle boundary values and such on your own?
So do you mean by time weighted averaged as in like how we group by bins, or is it just, do you mean more like a rolling average, or what?
Oh, to save time, I'll come back to you if we have time at the end and walk through it. I think we will.
That'd be cool. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
So rocking on from this part, what I wanted to show off was Grafana next. So normally, synonymously, if you're using InfluxDB, you're probably using Grafana. If you're part of the IoT world, they go together as a pair. So this is Grafana Cloud. And so Grafana, just for context, is a visualization platform. They are heavily within the monitoring space, but they basically provide a solution for building out dashboards flexibly without needing much coding knowledge at all. So what I'm going to show you is essentially how we connected to InfluxDB from Grafana. So Grafana has a series of plugins. Make sure I've got all these data sources, PLCnext. Yeah. I'm going to create a new one just so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to make it as a SQL-based one. So we have two plugins that we can use. And this comes into that question we had earlier, which was, do you use SQL or do you use InfluxQL? Currently, there's two separate plugins that you can use with Grafana and decide which ones you want to use. I'm actually using both, and you'll see why I've done that as a bit of a workaround in a bit. But I'm going to use Flight SQL just to show you how that connects. So I'm going to click Flight SQL. I'm going to copy in my host and port. Since we're secure, it's on port 443. Our authentication type is a token. I'm going to copy a token that I created earlier. I'm going to require TLS and SSL. You don't need this when you use, you don't need this when you use OSS unless you've added your own certificates. Database, and then PLCnext. Let's give it a save and test. There we go. So what we can do from here is click on the Explorer view within Grafana, which brings up basically a SQL builder. I'm personally not the SQL builder works okay, but because we don't use conventional SQL because we're a time series database, I'm just going to switch to raw SQL just so I can show you how to build out a query here. So remember that query that we did before, which was that average query. I'm just going to copy and paste that in here. And then we're going to run this query. And as you can see that we're starting to slowly pull this data. Now, the interesting thing here is this is static. So when you think about the query here is if I keep running this, I'm still just going to get the last 15 minutes of data, no matter where I run it from. Now, the cool thing that you can do with Grafana is they have dynamic variables, which means you can basically inject these into your queries, which means using their drop downs is a lot more versatile. I'm going to quickly show you that now. So essentially what I need to do is if I jump down onto the show query helper, you can see the supported macros that are part of the variables within Grafana. The one I'm going to use is the $time range here. If I copy this, and if I chuck this in here, like so, click that one. And if I now run this query, and if I then drag this query back for the last 2 days, you can see that we now have a dynamic query that queries over those last 2 days worth of data rather than just the 15-minute static that we've done before. So now that I'm happy with this query, it's giving us the vibration results for accelerator 1, accelerator 2, accelerator 3, accelerator 4. What I can do is just add these to the dashboard. We'll create a new dashboard, open dashboard. And you can see here, we can go from here, we can edit this. I'm going to bring this down to 15. We can give it a name if we want to. But the interesting thing that we're going to cover in the sort of Blue Peter moment of the dashboard is we're going to talk about how we could do some thresholding and work out alerts. So in this case, I'm seeing quite high levels from accelerator 3. So I basically want to make sure that I know about this. So I can basically do, give me a red when we're above 0.2. And then thresholding, we do dashed lines. And then we can start to see, as you can plot, basically where thresholding goes over a certain limit within our data. And click apply. So this is kind of like a basic, very, very basic query that lots of people use within InfluxDB and Grafana to start. Let's quickly jump over to a sort of Blue Peter moment that we do in the UK, where I'm like, here's one we made earlier. And you can sort of see some of the stuff that we've done here. So I'm going to do a refresh, and this should hopefully dramatically all fill, but we'll see. So just a bit of a time check, guys. How are we doing? Do you want me to, okay, just keep going?
Yeah, you're okay. We can always come back if you need us to.
Sweet. So we're not getting any data here, and that's probably because the device variables don't match up, because what we're actually looking for is the values that Kyle has brought in, which is interesting that I'm not seeing them just yet. The demo breaks.
That's device 1 naming compared to the PLCnext naming?
Yeah.
So this, yeah. 2 seconds.
You're fine.
Do you want me to change it on my end?
No, we should be okay. Let me quickly run this query again. There we go. I don't know what those didn't refresh.
Take your time. Hey, Alan.
Hey.
Last night, my wife just yelled at me. You never pay attention when I'm talking to you. And I thought, that's a weird way to start a conversation.
You know, my a good friend of mine called me last night and said he was having a problem with his girlfriend, actually. And she told him that if he doesn't marry her soon, that it's going to be a wife or death situation.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Man, just like that, Jay's got data. It's amazing.
Look, just a few dad jokes data. It's like a magic wand, and it all fixes itself. So just so there's no smoke with the just to look behind the curtain, it just looked like the variables hadn't updated. So essentially what I have here is a series of variables that I basically query InfluxDB for the tags that we'd created. For some reason they hadn't updated, so I'll go in and pester someone, one of the engineering team, and work out why that's not doing that for 3.0. But normally these should be reactive variables that update based on the tags that you see. And so you can see now we have device 1. I can use these within my queries that generate my data. So if I hit PLCnext, that's obviously dynamically updated these queries because we're not writing any data to the device PLCnext. You can't see the data there. If I then do this, you can see as we slowly start to write data to these.
I assume though that if you went PLCnext and went back in time, you're going to see data, right? You get data to that variable.
2 days. There you go.
You're not publishing to that now. You're publishing to device 1.
Correct. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Perfect.
And
Jay,
then yes,
should we start bringing the data back down to Dawood over at Software Toolbox?
You are perfect. Yeah, go for it. That was the Blue Peter moment. I will stop sharing.
Well done, sir. Thank you. And for your first Integrate Live on the fly demo, you had a little diagnosis in there. You perfect. Well done. The only thing I think we really missed from you is a dad joke, but we'll come back to you on that because I'm pretty sure you've got one.
Well, I used to be addicted to soap, but now I'm clean.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well,
speaking of that, did you hear they make a new pillowcase out of corduroy? How's how you say it? Anyway, yeah, they're making headlines.
Oh, very good. It was bringing your daughter or bring your son to work day. This is earlier in my professional career, not currently. And I brought my young daughter to work and she just started crying after 30 minutes. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Where's all the clowns you said you worked with?"
Yeah, Keith has got a joke in the comments that I think I'm going to send to his wife.
Dawood, you are.
Katie would like that one,
but you don't have to tell a joke.
Yeah, if the time is opportune, I've got one joke, but I need to lead into that. So let's first thank Kyle for also screwing me around a little bit by changing the publishing to different devices and channels, but it's fine, it's fixed. We've used variables in my instance. So let me quickly share my screen. I mean, never a dull moment, which we appreciate. So like Jay has now explained, look, everything sits in the InfluxDB. Obviously, what the goal now is, so the departure point from our perspective, or from my perspective, from Software Toolbox side, is to say, look, this data is now available. The data analysts are happy. They are analyzing these data like there's no tomorrow. They find relationships, they find patterns, they found, they designed machine learning algorithms and stuff like that. And now there's certain things that they want to kind of expose back to the plant floor. How do we do that? What we've seen from Kyle's perspective, obviously, so I want to go through the similarities. We're using a product from Software Toolbox from some of our partners today, which is called the OPC router, an incredible, easy and visual middleware that allows you to connect a whole lot of things together. Doesn't do microwaves yet, but we'll get there hopefully one day. So we start off obviously by configuring plugins. So from our perspective, like Kyle has shown from the Kepware side, there's a REST connection that's made. And if you recall, Kyle had the concept of post. The only difference on our side is we are doing a GET because we're sucking out of the database for that matter. So from a REST perspective, it's actually quite easy to set up. And hats off to the Influx team. I think your API documentation is spot on. So, I mean, I did this without any help from Jay. But there's, for example, the API configured, same URL. We're not using authentication because I'll show you now as part of how we do the call, we're actually passing the token. So this is actually quite easy. One other thing that I'm going to just talk through very briefly, but not to take Kyle's limelight, is that we also want to publish certain things once we've done some averages or means. So just send it to another. I want to get my terminology correct now. It's not the database, it's the measures, as Jay called it. So you would have recalled there's a Kepware measure, and there's also what I called a analysis or analytics or analysis measure. So we're going to do some calculations and store the results of that calculations in a different table if we speak normal database language. So by doing that, we've got in this product, we've got an Influx object. So again, I'm just making the same Influx connection, called it Integrate Live, host, there's the token. It exposes all the, well, we only have one organization, obviously, but there it exposes all the buckets or the databases. I see we've also got to update that now to databases, if that's coming from a terminology perspective. Thanks for the heads up. And then set timeout, stuff like that. So if I can do a test, it should say, look, I can successfully connect from my site. And then the last thing we're going to do is obviously I'm going to take that data and expose that data and publish the data that I suck out of Influx over an OPC UA tag or tags into a OPC UA server, which we are hosting, that Kyle can see over the internet with the necessary certificates, etc. So obviously I've got an OPC client. I call it my UA on my data center. Data center sits down in North Carolina. So again, I've just exposed everything. I'm just doing anonymous for now, but I can check the connection and it'll connection established. So how do we do this thing? Secondly, I've now built this thing. Now I'm not going to break this thing because I'm not going to tempt fate, and also, for the sake of time, I'm going to show you a few things. So if we look at this visual environment, firstly, like we said, is the way that we get data out of the Influx database is via a get statement or a get method rather than a post method like Kyle used. So I'm just going to copy this block quickly, and I've created a little sandbox because I want to show I've actually created it already. So there's the little REST object. So if I go into the REST object, obviously it's similar to what Kyle went through. There's an API we link. There's the method get, which is quite important. And then as part of the JSON format, there's all my parameters that I pass in terms of either headers or query strings for that matter. And that's why I don't want to do this from scratch, because I might make spelling mistakes. But there's the token, there's the database, there's the retention period, and there's the query. So we're just doing a standard mean query. But this is all good and well. What I actually want to show you from a efficiency point of view, so I can do a test. This REST object is now going to pass all those parameters through to Kyle's database in the cloud. So let's send it, and it's going to come back with something. It's going to tell me it's happy and all kinds of garble here, etc. But what I'm after is that content. So let's just quickly copy that content, and let me go open up another notepad file and say, what does this content look like? So if one recalls what Kyle showed us and what himself and Jay has spoken about is the fact that, look, we know now we're publishing to demo device and device one. And then there's all the columns. So that's kind of the structure of the payload or of the link protocol, as you guys have called it, which Kyle has also pasted from the GitHub perspective in there. And then it creates pretty much an array of values for that matter. Now, this is great. It's not what I'm used to seeing if I work with databases, but how do I now make sense of this? So obviously, I've got this in memory. I now, if I go back, I'm just going to say, don't do that, and I don't want to save that, cancel that. If I go back to my component here, the next step in the process of actually taking what I got from a REST call, from what the get statement has actually given to me, is I've got to kind of parse that in a JSON read component. So if I go back to my sandbox, and I actually don't want to go do that, I want to go copy. Let me go do that. We have a minute or two. So in my JSON read transfer object is empty. Now I can be fancy and I can go put in things and say, look, I want time and I want to put a value in the type, etc. But I'm lazy. So what I actually want to do is, and this is what makes Router an extremely easy product to use, is if I go click on the edit button, you can see the one that I just mistakenly put in there is all fine. But if I say, look, I don't know what I'm reading, but I'm just going to copy this example payload that I got from the REST get statement, and I close my edit again. Cleverly enough, this thing will parse it for me and say, look, this is the variables that you're after. So exactly, if you recall, it's demo device, it's device one, here's all the columns, which represents the tags for that matter, and here's the last entries that's in there, and I'm typically after the last entry for that matter. So I'm not going to do anything else, but if I say, look, I am interested in add the time for me, please. I am actually clicking the wrong button, so add the time and just call it time. And if I now had to go back here and say, look, I'm after mean acceleration one, so it's entry number 6 in that array. So if I go to number 6 and I say, look, add it in there and say mean 1, that will give me, if I click OK there, that'll now kind of give me the path items exposed. So I've done that already. So we've exposed acceleration 1 and motor 1 for that matter. I've then used a little variable object just to create them to accessible variables. And then that variables, like we said, because one thing I forgot to show you guys is that I did speak about it very briefly. There's the query that I'm also passing in terms of the read statement to create that moving average for that matter. So if I take the variable now, I've now got the query, I've calculated the running 5-minute average, and then that little object that I've shown you guys in terms of influx inserts. To talk terminology again, I can do a dynamic insert. I'll move it to the side. So that's where the next bucket, not bucket, but measure or column, table, as we call it, the analysis table. So I'll take the result of that mean and publish that. Now you can see there I've got my tag keys are still the old tag keys. I'm interested. I probably should change that now, but I'm not going to change it to see if it to actually see if it now publishes to channel and device based on analysis, and just take the results and publish that back in terms of fields. So we can put this alive, and I'm not publishing back to the OPC server yet, but I'll go into a productive mode. We should be able to see, so I'm on my last thing. So you see every 5 seconds, because I've got a little time trigger in here that says every 5 seconds, go read from the InfluxDb, do the average, and then publish it back to the InfluxDb for that matter. So I can hover over there so you can see every time that it does a REST call, it actually gets new data. And you would see every 5 seconds the data that it actually then passes over to the variable section in order to send back to the database changes. So that's theoretically, and Jay can show us just now whether that actually changes or not. I've got the database open here, but reality speaking, I wonder, there's channel and device. There's my 2 tags. If I say, look, run a quick query of saying what has happened, there's nothing. So I should change it theoretically, but that's not the end of the world.
So if you just kill the if you just delete the select star from Kepware where time, sorry, that's our bad.
That's fine. That's fine. So
and then if you turn,
should I just refresh this? We can do this very quickly. This is on your DB anyhow.
Yeah.
So I just go to there and I say it's analysis.
And turn
SQL sync.
back.
I've got to do that little thing there. If I say run now, there you go. So I've got the values are actually being sent to channel with the necessary things. So that's all good and well. So I'm reading from the database, I'm doing some calculations, and I'm writing results back into another table in the database. Now I obviously want to also enable the ability to send data down to Kyle again, so he can expose that to the plant floor. So how would I do that? Well, we saw in the plugins, I've just created an OPC UA connection to my public domain kind of UA server. So from this perspective, what I would do is if I scroll up to my transfer objects here, I've got a little OPC data access transfer object. So if I literally drag it over and say, look, I know I've configured the UA on DC, and I want to go browse my tags. I know it's sitting there under an MBTCP just because I love Modbus so much. Those are the 2 tags. They match the name, etc. I can apply it. I can say, okay. And then the most difficult part is to take that and map that to the right one. And that motor variable and map that to the right one. And then the lines cross and I couldn't care because I'm not in an art competition here. So if I go productive now, and I give it a second, by hook or by crook, Kyle should start seeing data. What I can show you, this is my data center with my OPC server, which Kyle accesses, and here's my version of Quick Client, and you can see my values are changing beautifully. So Kyle should now be able to continue that further. So that's how we use a product like OPC Router to extract data out of an Influx database, manipulate the data if needed, and convert that data back to OPC or MQTT if you want it to be, for that matter. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Well done, Doug. So we've got the data coming full circle back to Kepware. Kyle, wrap us up, and you and Peter, and let's get the data back in, and then Peter and Zach will have just a little bit of time as well if you want to go through anything else. We're going to have the time to do it.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so the last thing we're going to do, we're going to create an OPC UA connection to David's OPC server. We're going to bring that into Kepware. And then we're actually going to use something called advanced tags, which allows Kepware to write, or rather to link two data sources together. So oftentimes we see this in a recipe control type of environment where we're trying to pull, let's say some set points from a database and then write that directly down to the PLC. So that's more or less kind of what we're doing here. But we're going to showcase those values from OPC router and then push them down to the PLC, and then we can actually see those values in the HMI screen. So we will walk through that right now. So similar, like we did earlier, we'll create a channel. We'll select our OPC UA client driver. We're going to call this OPC router. And shout out to Jay and David for changing things on the fly when I forgot to name it, PLCnext, not device one. That's just me. So shout out to that. Okay, great. And then now what we're going to do is create, I'm going to grab this URL here. And I'm actually going to change the security policies here to none and none. I'm doing this from home. There was a lot of weird, we'll just call it IT issues. So we're doing this for demo purposes. In a real environment, obviously you would want to increase that security. So I know now we're in the danger zone, but I did go and change all of my passwords to Kenny. So now all I have are Kenny logins. Thank you. So we'll create that connection. We'll keep that very safe. There we go.
What's the thing about you should never use beef stew as a password?
Oh, no.
It's not strong good enough.
Oh, that's excellent. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Great. So now, after that fantastic dad joke, we can actually see, we'll go in and we created a device and we can actually browse now to David's OPC server. So we can go find the tags that he has created. We'll grab the acceleration and then the motor. We'll click OK. We'll get confirmation that those are actually in. And again, we can open up Quick Client here. We can see those tags once, there we go. All right, great. So now we've made that OPC UA connection to David's server. Now the last thing you have to do is actually write this down to the PLC. So we'll go in, we'll go to the advanced tag section. We'll start a tag here. We're going to select from this tag type down to link tag. We'll give it a name. We'll just call it to PLC, call it 1. We'll select our input. So in this case, we're trying to, the input would be what original source are we getting this from? So in this case, the OPC router, we'll go here, PLC1, we'll select the acceleration, we'll click apply. The output, where we want to write this to, go to PLCnext. And then we will go to what did I just select? The acceleration, click the acceleration insert. And then we'll click apply and we'll do the same thing again for the other value. 2. Same thing, input, we'll browse, OPC router, PLC, motor insert, apply, output again, down to the PLC, apply, click OK. So now what we'll see, if we actually go and open up our dashboard, we can actually see this value change. Hoping to see that in a couple seconds here. So now, again, so going full circle, started off from the PLC here, brought it into Kepware, brought that, those values into Influx. Influx did its thing, sent that data down to the OPC router, some analytics there. They sent some of that data back to Influx. But then we also said, hey, we can actually take that data too and send it right back down to the PLC, completing that full loop there. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Thanks, Kyle. Awesome. So audience, any questions for the panel as we start to move towards wrapping up? General question came in. Can you explain more about OPC? We might need a bit more specificity around that.
I will say one thing that, and maybe we can just touch on briefly. one of the pain points that we have in our industry, specifically dealing with OT, is the ability to be able to get data in and out of a control system. I think we all have kind of lived that in different ways, but we definitely have lived that in this workshop trying to get prepared for it. But again, and there's a good reason for that, right? We're trying to be secure, trying to make sure that we're protecting our critical assets. And so the beauty of the OPC router and being able to use OPC, you start to get some security around there, but it's complex, it's complicated.
Well, one thing I really like about OPC UA as opposed to a lot of the old comms is just the way the data stays in the data type that you want. So you don't have to do conversions. If I want a Boolean bit, it sends a Boolean. If I want a real, it sends a real. And so it allows you to send real data without doing crazy conversions as we're used to in the OT world, like bytes to words to reals to dents. It just works. And the interrogation of it is quite powerful.
Okay, some questions are coming in. I'm going to start with the most recent. Trey has asked us, since the PLCnext is running Linux, would it be possible to perform analytics directly in that OS, then pass the data up from there, eliminating a few of those connections? Absolutely. So the beauty of a smart PLC in a Linux environment is that you can write your own code and perform those analytics. You could run, like I mentioned in the demo that I'm hoping to do in October, I could run another application in that environment that's dedicated to doing those analytics, or I could choose to take raw data and pass it somewhere else. Ultimately, you're going to have to weigh, where is that data needed and most valuable? Do I really need to round trip it? Do I need to take it up and then bring it back down, or can I just run it right there on the edge? And there's going to be use cases for each of those, right? Specifically, consider in this demo, we only use data from the source, from a single source. But the reality is often you're bringing data in from multiple sources, and to perform analytics, you're not keeping it from a single source. And that's where you're going to need to bring your data up to a more corporate environment or to a higher level and then bring it back down. Yeah, Zach.
Yeah, Jeff, I just wanted to say, one thing I like to say when someone asks me an if question with PLCnext is, if can it do that, is I always fall back on the Spider-Man principle, which is with great power comes great responsibility. And a lot of times it's not a matter of if it can do it because you have a Linux box behind the scenes. Maybe you need a different version of the hardware, you need higher RAM capabilities, higher storage. The question really is, what should you be doing, right? And that is a question that is broader than hardware. It is broader than a single engineer sitting in a room trying to determine what's going on. It is, what is your customer looking to do? What is your plant floor looking to do? What does IT want from your system? What is IT allowing from your system? So it is allowing you to do a lot of things that before you could not do and was not possible because of the hardware. We remove that hurdle. Now it's, what should you do? So that is probably a question that answers a question which sometimes makes you look stupid, but I would say you need to look beyond the what is possible and now what is important for my facility.
And in 3 years' time, what will I be glad that I did? Because that becomes the other issue when we start talking about thinking about scale. So let's say that yes, we decide to do it on the PLC. Great. Mm-hmm. Is it going to work well for the next 5 implementations? Is it going to work well for the next 50 implementations?
Is it going to work well with the next firmware upgrade?
Right, exactly. So how am I going to manage this if I do it there? Good. All good.
Today's solution is tomorrow's problem, right?
Yeah.
Correct. That's right.
I think just to quickly add a spin from the IT side, there is like, no matter what database you're using or what product. It's the freedom of your data and where the context is. So a lot of the solutions that we've done is people having multiple factory lines of equivalent, and they want to look at anomalies across factory lines. So if one is deviating from the packaging somewhere, you can identify that. So if you're running your analytics that close to the device on that single edge device, and you're only monitoring that one PLC, how can you see the visibility across your line? So you need to see where you want your scope to be so you can get the most out of your data.
Yeah. And I don't know if it'd be one line answer, but the question around what's the problem we're solving today, right? So here's the reality of what we're trying to show. And we've done this multiple different ways now on Integrated Live. We've gone out to a cloud broker, come back in, the different things. Here's the reality, right? As Jeff had said, we have our data in the control system, we have ERP data, we have data all over the place now. And the ability to be able to leverage that data for value becomes very complicated, which is to my question earlier about, or my statement about the complexity of getting data in and out of your control system. And so what we're trying to show is that there's a couple things. One, there is options for time series data that is an open source. People can access it today and start using it and get value from it immediately. And there's one problem is if you don't have a time series data, you absolutely have access to time series data database. Second one is how do you leverage that to add value back into your control system? And that's where Software Toolbox comes very, very helpful in creating you a secure way to be able to manage OPC data if that's what you're dealing with. And so it's just, again, trying to, there's a term that I was told a long time ago, which raise your light level, right? We're trying to raise the light level of what is possible and what you can like, oh, I didn't know that was even an opportunity. Well, now there's like, oh, okay, you did that. Well, my problem is this. I can apply this to my problem, and now it's trying to raise the light level of what the opportunity is and what solutions, when you bring vendors together to work like we do, what kind of, we picked a very small, complex, or not complex, very simple problem. You may have a very complex problem, but these vendors working together can solve those problems.
Thank you, Alan. Pricing. Let's get just a sense. It's going to be easy for some, difficult for others. Peter and Zach, PLCnext, can you give us a basic range on one or two of the models of PLCnext?
Sure. I mean, the one that we were using on this controller is our medium performance controller. It's about $900, and it's a dual core processor it's quite powerful. The next version, if you look at my charts, about 1.5 times more performance. You're looking probably around $1,700 for that controller.
Thank you. Is there any type of scaling discounts at large scale?
Yes. Since we don't have sales guys on here, just say that, yeah, we'll take care of it. Also, one other thing I wanted to mention about that, Jeff, we have removable SD cards. And so what you can do is we don't have like a lot of versions. You don't buy it with, 2 mega memory or 10 mega memory or whatever. Our standard unit, our standard PLC that we use has about 300 meg of user writable data, but we have up to 32 gigabyte memory cards that can be added. So you can have significant amount of data locally that you could store. So it's flexible.
Okay, thank you. David, OPC router, how's that price out?
Check, I'm muted. No, I'm not muted anymore. I was just quickly calculating, sorry. So thanks for the heads up. So if you had to buy for what we look, so OPC router is kind of licensed per function. So you have the base license with a few things like JSON, et cetera, but REST, for example, you had to buy extra. OPC UA, you had to buy extra. So perpetually, if you had to buy what I've shown everyone here now, you're looking at about just over $3,000. If you had to subscribe to that and get a whole lot more, including Sparkplug, et cetera, you're looking at about $2,200 per year. So that's kind of the ballpark figures we're looking at in terms of what we've seen.
Thank you. Jay, which version of Influx can our audience download for free and try out? And how do they do that before maybe making a decision to look at pricing for hosted solutions and things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So InfluxDB version 2 OSS is alive and well. You can download that directly from our website. Just go straight there and we'll guide you. If you want to use V3, which is what we've been demoing today, that will eventually become to OSS, but we're still developing that currently. But the cloud tier that you saw is free to use with certain limits. You can only store like 30 days worth of data, etc. And then it goes to PayG. So you can definitely prototype and work with your data for free in cloud. And then if you want to expand and scale your use case, then go to the PayG tier.
Thank you, sir. And Kyle, pricing on Kepware.
Yeah, so kind of two ways to look at it. The one, if you wanted to do it, we'll call it the traditional way, which was priced by driver or by plugin. If you're looking at it from that place, you're looking at probably roughly, we'll call it $1,200 to $1,400 on an annual subscription, and that would be for the IoT Gateway, the low tier, as well as the OPC connectivity suite. The other way to look at it, that's very much for like a point solution. If you wanted to look at it from more of a, hey, I wanted to do this, but I wanted to do this solution across my entire enterprise, we have specific pricing that is, hey, give me all the drivers, give me all the plugins, and let me just rinse and repeat. How many Kepware servers do you need? Have it all unlocked. That's another way to look at it. List price for that, I'd say, well, want to be careful with my salespeople, but roughly 4,000 or so.
Okay, thank you. Question for Peter or Zach. You might have actually answered it just now, but I think because it just dropped off. But can you answer for everybody around the enterprise management tool for PLCnext? I think, Peter, you had an answer on that.
So when you say enterprise management, I'm thinking about managing firmwares and softwares. We do have the ability in our software to export a package, and then you can deploy that package from a central dashboard. So you could have 50 PLCs out there, you can upgrade the firmware remotely, and you can upgrade the application remotely as well. It's through our our what we call our professional cloud or Profi Cloud interface.
Okay, thank you. And then secondary question, Keith was curious if there's a preferred language predominantly amongst the programming or users for programming, Codesys or the Next Engineer.
Language, I don't know if he means by programming language like structured text or ladder. I prefer structured text as far as the language of the programming goes. But Codesys or PLCnext Engineer, the only difference is that you can load Codesys on our controller, and actually it wipes out our PLCnext Engineer. People do it for preference because they're used to it, or they want to have multi-vendor support for different PLCs. In that case, we're just a hardware location. The difference is cost. Codesys, you obviously have to pay a runtime license. Our PLCnext Engineer is included. So it's strictly a preference thing. Or maybe there's a certain function you need Codesys has, like motion control. If you need motion control, then Codesys would be required. For general ones, I think it's pretty much a choice.
Yeah, the only other function I could think of is Ethernet IP master capabilities is Codesys as well. So.
For the time being, we are adding.
Perfect.
Soon, trademark.
All right, and look at that. 89 minutes in, we're wrapped up. We had a successful project. Thank you. Kyle, David, Peter, Jay, Zach, the amount of work that you put in for this, it showed. You delivered it, a great example of how we could potentially go out into an operating environment where the historian is not robust enough to be hit every couple seconds for grabbing data out for analytics, and we showed another way to do it. And so I think it was a success. Alan, any closing thoughts before we wrap?
I think I share the same sentiment of recognizing the work that went into this and the complexity that everyone kind of had dealing with their corporate IT structures and yeah, so it was great. I really appreciated learning about InfluxDB and where that can go, and glad to have Jay part of our community, and also Peter, welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Zach, Kyle, David, you guys are already in.
And Alan and Jeff, I got a quick question for you.
Yes, Zach.
How many Dallas Cowboys fans does it take to screw in a light bulb?
All of them.
No, just one, but the rest of them stand around and talk about how great they used to be. So,
Oh, man.
Oh.
We have stayed away. We have stayed away from the political arena of sports affiliates.
yeah.
In our episodes, but I think we can all agree that if we're gonna pick on a fan base, that maybe we shouldn't pick on the Dallas Cowboy fan base.
Sorry, I'm an Eagles fan. I have to do it. So.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's you can
go.
substitute your own team in there if you want to.
Very good. Football season is upon us. Jay, I'll explain later on what football is. Everyone, thank you so much. To our audience, hey, listen, you can show your appreciation to these vendors by reaching out to them and engaging with them. They'd love to take more of your questions, as well as have an opportunity to show you some of the other cool things their products can do. So with that, we thank you so much. We'll have this episode posted on integrate.live.com by this time tomorrow, and we look forward to seeing some of the cool things that you've been building.